Welcome to another episode of Science from Your Sofa. I'm Emily.
And I'm Kristen. And in this episode, we're going to talk about streams and macroinvertebrates.
Why is stream health important to Lake George water quality? Well, there is a total of 141 streams that flow into Lake George, and 55% of the water that refills the lake comes from streams. So since over half of the water that recharges Lake George comes from streams, it's super important to make sure that any water entering the lake is free from pollution that could cause harm to Lake George water quality.
Stream health and macroinvertebrates go hand in hand. So what is an aquatic macroinvertebrate? Well, we can break down the words to really figure it out. So aquatic, of course, means water. Macro means big enough for us to see with our eyes, so we don't need a microscope to see it. And invertebrate means that these creatures, they don't have a backbone like we do. So our aquatic macroinvertebrates are really the bugs that are out there living in our streams. So do these bugs or macroinvertebrates spend their entire life in the stream? Well, some do, but most of them, they don't. And so a lot of these macroinvertebrates that we're going to be talking about, they have flies in their name. They're caddisflies, they're mayflies, they're stoneflies. That's because they eventually become the bugs that fly around on land. So these macroinvertebrates, most of them are going through metamorphosis. So our bugs flying around on land are going to lay their eggs in the water. Out of those eggs come these little macroinvertebrates, these little bugs crawling around in our streams. And a lot of these bugs have a nice exoskeleton, that hard outer coating. And underneath those exoskeletons, they're changing. And so then they crawl out of the stream, break out of their exoskeletons, and they become the bugs that fly around on land. How can these macroinvertebrates tell us whether or not we have a clean, healthy stream? And so our macroinvertebrates can give us an idea whether or not we have clean water by the presence or absence of them. So of course, we can't talk to the bugs and find out if they're living in clean water, but by just figuring out which bugs are living there, we know whether or not we have a clean, healthy stream. So some macroinvertebrates are tolerant of pollution, meaning they don't care if there's some pollution in the water, they can still survive. They're adapted to live in low oxygen conditions or water with some pollutants. But other macroinvertebrates, they're sensitive to pollution. They can only live in clean, clear streams. And so if we can find those macroinvertebrates in our waters, then we know we must have clean water.
What macroinvertebrates are considered pollution sensitive? The three main kinds that we tend to look for are caddisflies, mayflies, and stoneflies. Stoneflies tend to have two tails, and some kinds roll up into a ball when they feel threatened. Mayflies tend to have three tails and outer gills that you can see flowing almost like a superhero cape. And caddisflies, they make a case structure around them for protection. Other examples of pollution-sensitive macroinvertebrates include dobsonflies, some kinds of dragonflies, and water pennies. Where in the stream can you find these bugs? You can find these pollution-sensitive bugs under rocks in the stream in areas that we call riffles. Riffles are shallow areas of fast-moving water. The cobble or gravel bottom and well-oxygenated water provide optimal conditions for many underwater insects and spawning fish. How do you catch these macroinvertebrates? It's actually pretty simple to catch macroinvertebrates in a stream. You just need a net, you need some waterproof shoes, we have some stream boots right here, a bin where you can dump your sample into, and other materials like a macroinvertebrate ID sheet and a sorting tray. We use an ice cube tray, are also helpful. So let's head down to the stream and see what we can find.
So now that we're at the stream, let's see what sampling looks like. Emily is going to place her net downstream of her, so anything we loosen up is going to go into that net. Just kicking around, going to turn over the rocks, get down in that mud, loosen up those leaves so we can get those macroinvertebrates out from their hiding spots. Everything's then going to flow down into our net. Now that we've loosened up those macroinvertebrates, we're going to take that net, empty it in our bucket. This is where we're really going to start to see our macroinvertebrates swimming around. So they're too small for us to really see in the stream, but now that we caught them and in our buckets, we'll see what is out there today.
What did we find in the stream today? So it looks like we got a caddisfly, crayfish, a mayfly, another caddisfly, water pennies, a bunch of mayflies. Here you can see the external gills kind of fluttering like that superhero cape we talked about. Another kind of mayfly, and last but not least, a dobsonfly. So our findings today at the stream show a lot of pollution sensitive macroinvertebrates, and that's a good sign for the stream. So it's kind of showing that, you know, there's not a lot of pollution in there affecting these macroinvertebrates negatively. Thanks again for tuning into this episode of Science from Your Sofa covering macroinvertebrates and stream health. If you have any more questions about this topic, feel free to comment your questions down below and we'll be happy to answer them.
Also, feel free to let us know what macroinvertebrates you're finding in your local streams. And be sure to check out some of our summer public programs where you can come out with us and find those macroinvertebrates in some of our Lake George streams.